Marcus Hawley and Dale Bryant thought they could get away with it. In the quiet town of Willow Creek, they believed their lies would stay hidden, buried under the weight of an accident. But when Rachel Whitmore's body was found at the bottom of Stonebridge Ravine, it was only the beginning. A forgotten camera, high in the trees, would reveal their darkest secret, and no one, not even the most trusted faces in the town, would remain untouched by the truth. Willow Creek was the kind of town that rarely made the news. Nestled between thick woods and rolling hills, it was the perfect image of small-town America. Life moved slowly there. Families stayed for generations, and almost everyone knew each other by name. Crime was nearly unheard of, and the local police station spent more time handling stray dogs and missing bicycles than anything serious. It was the sort of place where the loudest sound at night was the crickets singing under the stars. People felt safe, and maybe because of that, they let their guard down. No one expected anything truly bad to happen in Willow Creek. Rachel Whitmore had lived there her whole life. She worked at the town's only library, a small brick building just off Main Street. She was known for her love of old books and hiking. Every afternoon after her shift ended, she would lace up her boots and head into the hills surrounding the town. Walking those trails was her escape, her way to clear her mind and breathe after long hours among dusty shelves and quiet whispers. Everyone in town had seen her on those paths at one time or another, her ponytail swinging behind her, a battered canvas backpack slung over one shoulder. On a cold November morning, Rachel's body was found at the bottom of Stonebridge Ravine, a steep, rocky drop deep within the woods. It was a local teenager, out hiking with friends, who made the discovery. The police arrived quickly, setting up tape around the area, but there wasn't much to investigate. The rain the night before had left the trails slick and treacherous. Footprints were smeared or washed away entirely. Rachel's injuries matched the kind someone might suffer from falling onto jagged rocks. To the officers on the scene, it looked like a tragic but simple accident. An autopsy was performed, but nothing suspicious was found. No signs of struggle, no defensive wounds. Her cause of death was listed as blunt force trauma from the fall. A few bruises and scratches, but nothing that hinted at anything more sinister. Within days, the case was officially closed. The police chief gave a short statement about the dangers of hiking alone and urged residents to be more careful. Grieving friends and neighbors placed flowers at the entrance to Stonebridge Trail. The town mourned, but in a way that felt muted, like they were mourning the idea that bad things could happen there at all. After the funeral, life in Willow Creek slowly returned to normal. The library hired a replacement. The trails reopened. People began to speak of Rachel in past tense, remembering her with fondness but not suspicion. No one questioned the conclusion that her death was an accident. No one except for Rachel's mother, who couldn't shake the feeling that something had been missed, something important. But without evidence, her concerns were little more than quiet whispers in her own mind. And so the case faded into the background, until a forgotten camera, hidden deep in the woods, revealed a chilling truth no one was prepared to face. Winter had begun to settle over Willow Creek, when the first hint of something unusual surfaced. A thin blanket of frost covered the trails each morning, and the air had a bite to it that kept most people indoors. The forest near Stonebridge Ravine, once full of hikers and birdwatchers, stood still and silent. It was during this quiet spell that Owen Griggs, a county maintenance worker, was assigned to check on a series of wildlife cameras installed in the forest as part of a conservation effort. The cameras had been set up in spring to monitor deer and coyote activity. Most people had forgotten they were even there. Owen had been doing this job for years, and it rarely offered surprises. But when he retrieved the memory card from a camera mounted high in the trees near the ravine, he noticed something odd. The device was dusty, and its batteries were almost drained, but it had continued recording long after the last scheduled check. Curious, he took it back to his office to review the footage. He expected to see the usual animals passing by, maybe the occasional camper or hiker, and for the most part, that's what he found. The earlier video showed harmless moments: raccoons scavenging, a fox darting between bushes, a family walking a trail in late summer. Hours of uneventful clips passed by and fast. Then, late one night in early November, a sequence of frames made Owen stop cold. It was the night Rachel had died. The timestamp matched. In the dim, grainy footage, the camera had been triggered by motion. The trees shook slightly in the wind. But what caught his attention were the shapes. Human figures, barely visible, moving just beyond the edge of the trail. The video was short and blurry. Two shapes appeared from the left side of the frame, following a third figure. The lead figure, presumed to be Rachel, walked ahead, unaware. The two behind her paused, then moved quickly. One raised an arm. The movement was sudden, aggressive. Moments later, the lead figure vanished from view. There was no clear sound, but a faint high-pitched noise, almost like a scream, could be heard in the background. The other two figures didn't chase or panic. They simply turned and left the way they came. Owen watched the clip over and over, unsure of what he was seeing. It wasn't conclusive. Faces couldn't be seen. There were no names, no voices. But something about it didn't sit right. It didn't look like a fall. It looked like something else. Something intentional. He knew he couldn't ignore it. That afternoon, he handed the footage over to the sheriff's office. At first, the officers were skeptical. But once they reviewed the tape themselves, their attitude changed. Without any warning, the case that had seemed settled was cracked back open. Rachel's accident was no longer just a closed chapter. It was a live investigation again. And for the first time, there was a question no one in town had dared to ask out loud. If Rachel had Dante fallen on her own, then who had been up there with her? The discovery of the footage sent a quiet ripple through Willow Creek. Though no official announcement had been made, word spread quickly. People talked in hushed voices at the diner, at the gas station, in the library where Rachel used to work. For the first time since her death, there was doubt. The idea that someone might have followed Rachel, that someone from their own town might be involved, unsettled everyone. Behind closed doors, suspicions grew. Old arguments were remembered. Small-town grudges, once dismissed as harmless, began to seem more serious. Investigators returned to the trail, this time with fresh eyes. They scoured the area near the ravine, but weeks had passed since Rachel's death. Rain had washed away most physical evidence. Still, the camera had shown enough. There were 3 people on that trail that night, not one. That single fact was enough to change everything. Authorities began looking into Rachel's final weeks. Her phone records were examined, her emails pulled from the cloud. What emerged wasn't scandalous, but it was revealing. Rachel had recently inherited a strip of land that bordered the northern edge of the forest, land that included part of the old Stonebridge property. It wasn't large, but it had value. Several people had contacted her in the months before her death, hoping to buy it. She had refused every offer. What most didn't know was that Rachel had planned to donate the land to a nature reserve, permanently removing it from commercial use. Among those who had shown interest in the land was Marcus Hall, the owner of a local campground that sat just a few hundred yards from the property line. Marcus had big plans to expand his business. The land Rachel owned was the missing piece. With it, he could double the number of campsites and had a second trailhead. Without it, his project was stuck. Further digging revealed Marcus hadn't acted alone. He had a business partner, Dale Bryant, who ran logistics and handled local permits. Dale had a clean reputation, but his name appeared several times in Rachel's correspondence. One of her emails, sent just 2 weeks before she died, described Dale's behavior as persistent and unsettling. She never elaborated, but investigators noted the tone shift. Rachel, usually calm and composed, had sounded uneasy. Then came the detail that made everything shift. In one still frame from the wildlife camera footage, despite the blur, a patch of light fabric stood out on the back of one figure, enhanced and digitally clarified. It appeared to be a logo, a mountain peak with the words Willow Creek Outfitters. It was the same logo embroidered on the back of the custom jackets worn by Marcus S. employees. A coincidence was possible, but unlikely. The investigators now had a direction. The pieces weren't all in place yet, but the outline was forming. Rachel hadn't been alone by accident. She hadn't fallen by chance. She had been targeted. The only question now was how far Marcus and Dale had been willing to go to get what they wanted, and whether what happened at the ravine had truly been an accident or something far more deliberate. With the pieces starting to align, investigators shifted their focus towards strategy. They didn't want to confront Marcus and Dale outright. There was still no direct proof tying them to Rachel's death, only suspicions and a vague silhouette on a low-resolution video. A confrontation could drive them into silence or worse, give them time to cover their tracks. So, detectives decided to be patient. They needed the men to talk, to feel secure enough to let something slip. The best way to do that was to let them believe the land they wanted so badly might finally be within reach. A member of the investigation team posed as a representative for a fictional investment firm claiming to have recently acquired Rachel's land from her family. The news was quietly spread through town, where it was sure to reach Marcus through casual conversation. It didn't take long. Within a week, Marcus arranged a meeting with the firm's buyer, expressing sudden interest in a joint venture. He played the role of a grieving local who wanted to honor Rachel's memory while developing the land responsibly. Over the next few meetings, Marcus became more confident, even boastful. He hinted that Rachel had been unreasonable, that she had gotten herself into trouble. He claimed she ignored warnings, that she had made things difficult. The language he used grew increasingly careless, and investigators took note of every word. In one recorded conversation, he even said, "She wouldn't listen. We tried being nice about it." That sentence, vague as it was, set off alarms. While Marcus was being monitored, Dale Bryant was brought in under the pretense of a zoning review. Investigators watched his behavior closely. He was nervous, jumpy, and less controlled than Marcus. During the interview, he asked whether Rachel's case was still closed, even though that detail hadn't been mentioned. The officer said nothing at the time, but his anxiety spoke volumes. Finally, with enough circumstantial pressure mounting, police executed a search warrant on Marcus's property. Hidden in a storage shed behind the campground office, they found a collection of outdoor gear, including 2 rain-soaked jackets and a pair of hiking boots. The jackets matched the ones seen on the camera. One of them, when tested, contained traces of blood, degraded but human. DNA analysis confirmed it matched Rachel's profile. The chain of events could no longer be dismissed. Faced with the evidence and fearing a harsher sentence, Marcus broke. He confessed that he and Dale had followed Rachel that night to confront her. The plan, according to him, had only been to pressure her, scare her into changing her mind. But when she resisted and threatened to report them for harassment, tempers flared. Dale, in a moment of panic, shoved her. She lost her balance on the slick edge of the ravine and fell. Marcus claimed it was never meant to go that far. But instead of calling for help, they fled, deciding it was better to let it look like an accident than face what they'd done. That choice sealed their fate. What they hadn't known was that a forgotten camera, hidden high in the trees, had been silently watching, capturing the shadows that would unravel their carefully spun life. The trial drew more attention than Willow Creek had seen in decades. Reporters came from neighboring counties. Cameras lined the courthouse steps. For a town so used to silence, the sudden rush of attention felt overwhelming. Residents who had once shared quiet smiles in the grocery store now spoke in whispers, their trust shaken. It wasn't just the crime itself that disturbed them. It was the realization that the danger had come from familiar faces. People they'd waved to, people they'd trusted. In court, the prosecution built its case methodically. They presented the wildlife footage, grainy but undeniable. While the video didn't show Rachel's fall in clear detail, it established that she wasn't alone that night. Expert witnesses testified about body language and movement patterns. Forensic analysts confirmed that the blood found on Marcus's jacket matched Rachel's DNA. The confession, recorded during a controlled interview, was played for the jury in full. Though Marcus tried to frame the event as a tragic accident, the prosecution emphasized the decisions made afterward, the failure to call for help, the deliberate silence, the lies that followed. Dale's defense team attempted to argue that he hadn't meant to hurt Rachel, that it had all happened in a moment of fear and frustration. But the court was not moved by claims of panic. The evidence painted a picture not just of a confrontation, but of premeditated pressure. 2 men cornering a woman to gain something they wanted. The jury deliberated for less than 2 days before returning their verdict. Marcus Holler was convicted of manslaughter and obstruction of justice. Dale Bryant was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter and conspiracy to commit coercion. Both received lengthy prison sentences. As the verdict was read aloud, Rachel's mother wept silently in the front row. She had never believed the official version of events, and now, finally, the truth had been spoken out loud for all to hear. In the weeks following the trial, Willow Creek began to reckon with its loss. A memorial bench was placed near the start of the Stonebridge Trail, engraved with Rachel's name and the words, "For the ones who walk with quiet strength." The trail itself was renamed Whitmore Path. But even with these gestures, a sense of unease lingered in the air. People looked over their shoulders more often. The idea that a camera placed there for wildlife, not justice, had been the only witness to the truth changed how residents viewed the woods and each other. Rachel's story became more than a local tragedy. It was used in law enforcement seminars as a case study on the value of accidental surveillance. Her name appeared in articles about digital forensics, about how even in remote places, truth can still be caught in unexpected ways. Life in Willow Creek slowly settled again, but it would never return to what it had been before. Trust, once broken, is not easily rebuilt. And the ravine, once just part of the landscape, became a reminder of how shadows can lie, but also of how they can tell a story if someone is watching